My name's Steve Zimmerman, and I live in Ontario in a little town called Midland on the edge of Georgian Bay. And I am a retired pastor, and I now author books and sculpt in stone.
In 2017, pain developed in Steve's lower body, forcing him to stop the work he loves so much.
When one is sculpting, obviously you're standing for great lengths of time, and I noticed I was becoming very sore after a couple of hours, and that pain progressed quite rapidly until about November, when I went for an MRI and discovered I had a herniated disc. I went to Los Angeles to have it dealt with, and it was not successful. And I started to question whether or not that was the root of my pain. The pain began with a very uncomfortable feeling in my hip, and it began to radiate down my left leg, and a numbness ensued that ended up right down the sort of front and side of my leg. And the pain became excruciating. I couldn't stand for more than a couple of minutes just having a casual conversation with someone. And lying down, oddly enough, caused me an awful lot of pain. I could lessen the pain by sitting for short periods of time, but it really started to impact my life. I couldn't sit and write for any length of time, certainly couldn't sculpt. So it just became debilitating.
He and his wife took off to the Sunshine State, and for Steve, down the road to recovery.
So when I came to Florida, I almost immediately began to search for facilities that I could go to get some help. And in doing so, the Bonati Institute came to mind. I made a phone call, and I was asked to, after a short discussion of what my problem was, I was asked to get a MRI, which I did, and I was promised that a surgeon would call me within 48 hours. Being from Canada, where wait times are measured in years, I was astounded that I could get that kind of response. So I had an MRI, and 2 days later I received a call from a surgeon who discussed what my condition was and why I was in such agony. After reviewing the MRI, the surgeon indicated to me that I had osteoarthritis in my back, up and down my spine. But in this area it was worse, and I had developed severe stenosis, which was pinching the nerve going down my leg. So the next step was to schedule me coming in for the preliminary, I suppose, of having surgery. And when he asked me if 2 days hence was convenient after I got off the floor, I said absolutely. So I was just amazed at the response time and just the calmness and the whole attitude of, we know what your problem is and we're here to fix it.
With his initial experience on the phone with Bonati being unlike anything he's ever experienced in Canada, Steve confidently decided to move forward with his treatment and visit the Bonati Spine Institute for a consultation.
I arrived at the clinic in a wheelchair in a lot of discomfort. That progressed to some pre-op tests that took the balance of the day, and we were asked to make arrangements to be within a half mile of the institute, ready for Thursday, and that was the end of the day, and that was the first day in months that my wife and I felt some peace that this might have an ending.
The outpatient Bonati spine procedures are performed incrementally through a small incision. Our patented surgical tools keep surrounding muscles and tissues safe. It's because of these techniques that Bonati's procedures are less likely to cause scar tissue and blood loss, and still enabled the spine to maintain its mobility. Steve tells us more about his experience in the operating room.
The levels that required surgery was L4-5 and L5-S1. And Dr. Bonati and Dr. Scott performed a total of 4 procedures to alleviate the pain that I was experiencing at the time. And I watched the procedure on a monitor, and there were only 2 questions that I was asked. Tell me whether your pain is in your back or in your leg. And I was told that that would indicate the position of the nerve and the work that was being done at the time. It was just an incredible experience to have the work done, and I felt a partnership between myself and the 2 surgeons. It was terrific.
The Bonati Spine Institute believes that only a patient should evaluate the merits of their treatment. That's why surgical guests just like Steve from over 33 different countries from around the world trust their backs to Bonati.
After the surgery was complete, I was back in the recovery room, and I was asked by the doctors to stand up and walk down a short hallway and to articulate whether or not I had pain. And I walked down the hall. The pain was completely gone. After the surgery, we left very shortly for home, and I was a little concerned because it was so quick after the procedures had been done, but I felt terrific. We drove home, and once I was at my home, I almost immediately began doing what I was used to do. I could stand and sculpt. I didn't push the envelope too far, but in a matter of a month or 2, there was no residual effect whatsoever, except good mobility. So I began to write again and sculpt and walk. My wife and I still walk 3 miles a day, and we enjoy good health. And the whole recovery was really just an ever-escalating wellness that came over me, and it exists today. Since I arrived home, I've been asked a number of times about my experience, and I've had the opportunity to direct people who have serious back issues to Bonati. The reason that I find that easy to do is I feel like I'm doing them a monumental favor.
In the fall of 2018, Steve returned to Hudson to present Dr. Bonati with a gift.
The sculpture that I presented to Dr. Bonati, I actually sculpted 20 years ago. The piece is called Raven's Peak, sculpted out of Canadian bedrock off the west coast of Newfoundland. And it replicates the dark cliffs that ravens used to land on and nest in. And humorous story, when he completed my surgery, and I was so elated, I wanted to reciprocate in some fashion. And he knew that I sculpted in stone, so I showed him my website, and the one that I presented to him was my all-time favorite, and I was pointing all around it, and he said, "Boy, I really love this one." And I said, "Great, it's yours. What do you give a guy who's giving you your life back?"